Here's the training objectives on this task. To weld T2 stainless steel structure completely based on the provided drawing. Task: to make stainless steel structure using 2 mm stainless material. Objective: to weld completely stainless structure based on the provided drawing. Goals: to strengthen welding skills for stainless structure. To make sound welds without any defects, such as porosity, burn-through, oxidation, etc. To interpret drawings accurately, including the front view, top view, side view, etc. Materials: for the stainless steel structure, uses a 2 mm plate, 250 mm high, 200 mm long, and 200 mm wide. Welding process is GTAW stainless steel. Welding rod is T308 1.6 mm and 2.4 mm. Shielding gas is argon 99.9%. Main focus of the task: make sure not to damage the base material. Clean up the stainless steel rod with acetone if there are any contaminants. For stainless steel welding, a ceramic nozzle, a gas lens, and a collet chuck are required. Prepare a sharp the electrode tip as pointed end. Prepare water in the basket bigger than the stainless steel structure and use it for cooling down the base material heated during welding. Make sure to weld the base material without any misalignment. Before welding, oxide layers must be removed prior to welding with a stainless steel wire brush. Use a stainless steel wire brush to remove oxide layers. Mark the guide line before welding as stainless steel structure should have 5 mm bead width. While welding, pay attention to prevent any defects such as porosity, burn-through, oxidation, etc. Please check the preparations and tools for this training. Precautions. Before start welding, check if there is anything wrong with material such as incorrect size or machining errors, etc. If so, request to replace it. Once start welding, it is not allowed to replace the materials. A 2% thorium electrode is used for stainless steel welding. Use an electrode sharpened like a pointed end because DC is used for stainless steel welding. When tack welding, alignment is the most important than others. Check if any misalignment with a steel ruler and repeat checking even if the tack welding is done. When a tungsten electrode touches to the base material, it will get a blackish oxidation. Keep the tungsten electrode away from the base material. Keep only about 1 to 2 mm distance and make tack welds if it's too far. It will not penetrate it. Do not make any gaps between the bottom plate and the structure. Hold tight to make tack welds without any gap. Before getting in the main welding, remove the oxide layers thoroughly with a stainless steel wire brush. Argon gas purging should be supplied to the inside of stainless steel structure to protect welding beads from oxidation. Use 99.9% argon gas and supply to the structure inside during the entire welding. The gas flow rate for purging gas to protect the structure inside is 5 liters per minute. For the first time welding, the shielding gas should be provided before starting the arc. When the weld joint is shielded by the gas, proceed welding by starting an arc. For the vertical butt welding, the welder's posture shall have enough space to make an appropriate work angle. The proper posture is that the base material comes below the knee with a seated position and allows the nozzle to contact the material with a slightly folded arm. The horizontal fillet welding technique to assemble the bottom plate and the structure is slightly different from butt and corner welding technique. Put the nozzle in between the base materials closely and weave forward in a zigzag pattern. After finishing the arc, do not lift up the welding torch until the gas post flow finished. The color of the welding bead is determined by how well the weld joint has been protected by the shielding gas for stainless welding. Depending on the degree of heat received, beads are tinted in the order of silver, yellow, blue, purple, black. Yellow, blue, and purple beads are considered as good welding. Please check the tasks to perform. Preparation of base material weld joints. Review the drawing and confirm all part of material are given. Check the material quantity and measure the size. Prior to welding, if there is any material with wrong size or machined incorrectly, ask for replacement. After starting welding, it is not allowed to replace the parts. Check the material quantity and size carefully by cross-checking with the drawing. Mark which part of the material's location corresponds to the structure against the drawing. Mark the location of the materials on the materials according to the drawing directly with a paint marker to avoid confusing the front and back panels of the plates. A 2% thorium electrode is used for stainless steel welding. Due to DCEN is used, sharpen the electrode tip as pointed end. For stainless steel welding, T308 is used as welding rod. It will show an appropriate amount of ferrite content when it is deposited. So, it has excellent crack resistance and mechanical properties. For this task, 1.6 and 2.4 mm filler metal will be used. Tack welding for base material. While tack welding, maintaining an alignment is the most critical. Check the alignment with a steel ruler and make tacks at both ends. Set the current about 80 ampere. The gas flow rate 10 milliliters. Make tack welds according to the drawing with provided materials. Start an arc at the butt joint and make tack welds with autogenous welding technique by melting base material with the arc heat without filler metal. After tack welding, check if the level of the base material is even. Check repeatedly if there is any distortion with a steel ruler. Tack welding is classified into the butt joint, corner joint, and fillet joint tack welding. Tack welding from a side view, front view, and top view in order. After tack welding, check if there are any gaps between the base materials. It is important to make an alignment and keep no gap to avoid a burn-through. When a tungsten electrode touches to the base material, it will get a blackish oxidation. Keep the tungsten electrode away from the base material. Keep only about 1 to 2 millimeter distance and make tack welds because if it's too far, it will not be penetrated. For corner joint, tack weld precisely to avoid the gap between the plates. Tack weld holding the plates with a hand and then align the right angle with a square gauge. If it's not a right angle, correct the angle by bending or flattening material with hands. The assembly sequence is similar to the one for aluminum welding. The welder is welding tacks by holding material without any special fixture at the moment. Fixtures like G-clamp could be used, but pay extra care because aluminum is soft material so that it gets easily deformed. After corner tack welding, check the right angle of the corner with a square gauge. If it's a butt joint tack welding, make 2 tack weld at the end and middle, respectively. Whenever tack welding finishes, check the right angle of the corner with a square gauge. In order to tack welding for the bottom plate and the structure, hold the structure with a G-clamp. Do not make any gaps between the bottom plate and the structure. Hold tight to make tack welds without any gap. First, preheat the bottom plate with the arc heat, then move up the arc and make a small tack weld using 2.4 millimeter welding rod. When tack welding the base plate, it is necessary to wait 4 to 5 seconds until the molten metal cools down before removing the torch. Stainless steel welding. The oxide layers must be removed prior to welding with a stainless steel brush. Stainless steel brushing can remove not only the oxide layers, but also other contaminants such as cutting fluid, oils, and so on. The oxide layers removal is required not only for the specific area, but also all areas to be welded. Do not miss the butt joint part. The welded structure can be completed with clean condition by placing a steel ruler next to weld joint considering the bead width when removing oxide layers. For the stainless steel and aluminum welding, only the outer weld profile will be assessed. Pay special attention to the outer weld profile and other tasks. After removing aluminum oxide layers, mark the guideline with a marking needle considering the bead width. Mark the guideline for butt joint and fillet joint, except corner joint, since for the corner joint, edge of material will be a guideline for welding. The marked line for the butt joint is the guideline in order to align the uniform bead width. Draw the guideline with 3 millimeter plates for the fillet joint. For fillet joint, deposit weldment up to the marked guideline. When weldment didn't deposit up to the guideline, a competitor will lose the marks for undersize of fillet while marking process. Before starting this welding, stainless steel welding requires a shield work to prevent oxidation of the back bead. Supply 99.9% argon gas to the structure inside during the entire welding. Insert the tube the opening in the cover plate. Make tack welds at the cover plate instead of complete welding, since it is temporarily attached for gas purging. This cover plate will be removed after welding completion. Fix it only to the extent that it doesn't fall off. Connect the argon gas tube to the tube connector. Gas flow rate for argon purging is 5 liters per minute. Vertical butt welding. Start an arc from the bottom plate and move it to the top while welding. In the beginning, make 2 to 3 times of spot welds and keep the short arc length. Align the bead width with spot welds. A welder has drawn 5 mm bead width line. Weave nozzle until can reach the base materials in a zigzag pattern and then pause an arc. When the posture is stable and torch can maintain the travel angle, weave and continue welding. The proper posture is that the base material comes below the knee with a seated position and allows the nozzle to contact the material with a slightly folded arm. Continue spot welding until torch work angle can be maintained. Maintain work angle at 90 degrees, travel angle at 80 to 90 degrees, and the tilting angle of the welding rod at 10 to 20 degrees from the surface. Keep the short arc length so that the electrode does not touch the base materials and make adequate bead width by weaving in a zigzag or half-moon pattern. At this time, continue welding by feeding and pausing the filler metal repeatedly in front of the arc instead of feeding continuously. Finish the endpoint with spot welding ahead of 5 mm from the endpoint. Do not lift up the welding torch until the gas post flow finished after finishing an arc. Check if the bead width is uniform and regular, if there are over-excessive penetration, and if there are any porosity or contaminant inclusion. Inclined vertical corner joint welding. Use 1.6 mm welding rod. With 2.4 or 2.6 mm, it may turn out too thick weld bead. Use 60 to 65 ampere current. Continue welding by feeding and pausing the filler metal repeatedly in front of the arc instead of feeding continuously. Maintain work angle 90 degrees, travel angle 75 to 85 degrees, and the tilting angle of welding rod shall be around 10 to 20 degrees along the welding line. Depending on the welder's skills, the current can be partially adjusted. If the welding speed is fast, use high current. If it's not, lower the current a little bit. Do not lift up the welding torch until the gas post flow finished. Horizontal butt welding. Use 1.6 mm welding rod and set a current at 60 to 65 ampere. When performing GTAW welding, the shielding gas must come out first before starting the arc. Start an arc after shielding the weld joint with the gas. Keep the short arc length so that the electrode does not touch the base materials, and make adequate bead width by weaving in a zigzag or half-moon pattern. Continue welding by touching and pausing repeatedly in front of the arc instead of feeding continually. The color of the welding bead is determined by how well the weld joint has been protected by the shielding gas for stainless welding. Depending on the degree of heat received, beads are tinted in the order of silver, yellow, blue, purple, black. Yellow, blue, and purple beads. Black bead means just before the oxidation. Gray bead means complete oxidation has occurred. Yellow, blue, and yellow bead means a sound welding condition. At this time, stop and start the arc periodically for 2 or 3 times. Do not lift up the welding torch until the gas post flow finished. Horizontal fillet welding. Let the shielding gas come out first in the beginning. After that, start an arc and make spot welds. Start welding by making spot welds along with the guideline. After that, when the materials is melting, proceed welding by keeping the bead width adequately with a zigzag weaving pattern. The welder uses 2.4 mm welding rod. fillet welding technique is a little different from butt or corner joint welding. Proceed welding with a zigzag weaving pattern by keeping tight gap of nozzle in between the base materials. A constant bead line can be made when weaving by allowing the molten puddle can reach the marked guideline. Finish with 2 or 3 spot welds 5 mm ahead of the endpoint, because the closer to the endpoint, the more heats are accumulated. Do not lift up the welding torch until the gas post flow finished. Check the welding quality. Check the visual welding quality of stainless steel structure when welding finished. Remove the tacked cover plate to check the back bead welding quality. Check if there are any oxidation on the back bead. Visual inspection. Check if the bead width is uniform and regular. Check if there is any excessive bead reinforcement on weld joint and porosity or contaminants inclusion on the surface. Check if there is undercut on the joint, the fillet size meets the specification, and there is burn through. Please check the key points of the task you have done this time. So far, we have learned about welding of stainless steel structures. Thank you for your hard work.